In the 1850s, the French launched an invasion into our country, painting a picture of a civilized and sophisticated land called Annam. They portrayed Annam as a gift from their benevolent motherland, bestowing upon it the blessings of French civilization. However, after more than half a century, the grand and luxurious image has vanished, giving way to images of a starving and impoverished population oppressed by the colonial regime, which is half feudal in nature. So, he made the decision to travel abroad to France, to the West, in order to understand why they were wealthy and to uncover the hidden truths behind the proclamations of freedom, equality, and fraternity that the French colonizers boasted about in their colonial territories. This young man's name was Nguyễn Tất Thành.
On June 5, 1911, from Nha Rong Harbor, the patriotic young man Nguyễn Tất Thành boarded the La Touche travel ship, beginning his journey to fight a part to national liberation and the country's liberation with a new name, Ban Ba. Nguyễn Tất Thành embarked on this journey with empty hands, overcoming countless hardships and engaging in various occupations to make a living, with a desire to learn the civilization that the Western country still preached in the colonial territories. The ship made its way to Singapore, crossed the Malacca Strait and reached India, then continued to the Horn of Africa, sailed to the Red Sea and Mediterranean Sea, and docked at the port of Marseille, France. On July 6, 1911, the ship stayed in France for a while before continuing its journey to the Americas. The ship passes the west coast of Africa, where many French colonies were concentrated. During the long stopovers, Ban Ba had the opportunity to interact with the local inhabitants, and he observed that they shared the same fate as his homeland compatriots.
Nguyễn Tất Thành came to realize that wherever in the world there are the rich and the poor, the exploiters and the exploited, the oppressed and the oppressors. He also recognized that even though in this world people are from different races, there are only two groups of them, the exploiters and the exploited, and there's only one true fraternity, the fraternity of proletariats.
In terms of governance and policies under French colonial rule, the people lost their sovereignty and freedom, living under the rule of dictatorship. There was a stark contrast between the Europeans and the indigenous people. The Europeans enjoyed complete freedom and dominance as absolute masters, while the indigenous people were silenced and restrained, with no rights to voice their opinions. If they dared to oppose, they would be labeled as rebels or revolutionaries and subjected to corresponding treatment. It was even more miserable for those who traveled abroad to escape from the supposedly gentle rule. Their families would be harassed, and if they were captured, they would be subjected to fierce imprisonment or execution. How do you feel when you first enter this prison?
I felt a very dark, like a sad, like a veil
Yeah,
come
it's
over
dark.
me.
Right?
Yes, it's very, very sad. But it was so nice to learn how they went through all of that.
Yes.
In terms of education, a policy of intellectual suppression was cruelly enforced. For the animal race, there's only one good way to go with them, that is to rule them with brutal force. To impart education to the animals or allow them to have education themselves means, on the one hand, to supply them with quick-firing guns to fight against us, and, on the other hand, to train a pack of clever dogs, causing more trouble than good. Lastly, in terms of society, the people suffer from discrimination and oppression, with racial and class injustices and inequalities becoming increasingly severe. Famine and epidemics ravage the land, adding to the pain and misery of people's daily lives. Furthermore, the French colonizer poisoned the people with alcohol and opium. The crimes committed by the French colonizer are beyond words to fully describe.
Now I'm standing at Hua Lo prison, where witness the inhuman atrocity of French colonizer in the land of Annam in the past. So what's the truth behind the label of civilizing mission? Let us embark on a journey to explore it together.
In the article Help Love for France, The Guardian, Ho Chi Minh wrote, "These rascals are outnumbered by over 100 legal and opium dens." To explain the lack of investment in education, Ho Chi Minh exposed the corruption of the ruling officials. Out of the 12 million dong from the Cochin China's budget, 10 million dong found its way into the pockets of officials. Ho Chi Minh delved deeply into the insidious plot of the French colonialists to obscure our lineage, making them ignorant and easily ruled behind the facade of civilization and intellect they constructed, induced stupor to dominate. That is the most brutal method implemented by the colonial authorities in our country. From the pages of French soldiers' diaries, we can see that the atrocities of colonialism were so appalling that even the French themselves were haunted and casted down on their own actions. I only remember one thing, that we were even more savage and brutal than the pirates themselves. Why have such barbaric acts towards someone already condemned to death? Why have such physical torture? Why ridicule prisoners through villages? To understand the colonization campaign, please read the following excerpt from a travel diary of a colonial soldier. On the once flat salt fields lay 3 corpses: the naked baby, the young woman disemboweled with her left arm rigidly raising toward the indifferent sky, hand clenched. As for the elderly man, his condition was indeed gruesome. His naked body, twisted by flames, rendered unrecognizable, his melted fat congealing, and his abdomen bloated, golden and gleaming, resembling a roasted pig skin. Upon writing this down, I trembled, tears streaming down, blending with the ink. I could write no further. Oh, the agony of France, East and West in anguish, humanity in torment.
In an article published in L'Humanité on January 1923, Ho Chi Minh enumerates the finance records of French colonial rule, prompting us the question, who is the guardian of whom? Despite the authority attempts to deceive and manipulate the people, the truth is that Đông Dương has been drained dry. Throughout the year 1914 and 1980, nearly 10,000 enemies were coerced to abandon their fields and gardens to go to Europe. Despite the shortage of labor, Indochina was forced to send 500,000 tons of rice to contribute to the sustenance of those who oppressed them. Every year, we, enemies, toil and weep, handing over around 450 million francs, mostly to fatten up those who lick up their suffering. For the honor of the French colonial empire, colonial Indochina suffered severe damage. 51,000 enemies were covered and put onto the front lines by the French colonialists. 49,000 people were sent to factories to produce military equipment. In the official reports, the French often write about recruiting volunteers, but the truth is the enemies were forcibly recruited and thrust into a war at human shields. The French not only sent the enemies to the front lines, but also stripped away everything they could through taxes.
In 1912, on a ship of scheduled readiness company going around Africa, when seeing the black people being swept away by the waves because the Frenchmen on the boat forced them to swim to the communication ship, Ho Chi Minh cried. In our country, I also saw the same thing happen in Phan Rang. The French laughed loudly while our compatriots were drowning to death because of them. From the colonist perspective, the lives of the local people, yellow or black, were not worth a penny to them.
In his book, Le procès de la colonisation française, or indictment of French colonization, Ho Chi Minh also denounced the crimes of the French colonialists, not only in Indochina and Vietnam, but in all the colonies, Algeria, Tunisia, West Africa, and so on. He took off the mask of imperialism with irrefutable evidence and exhibits.
And not just the French colonialists, President Ho Chi Minh gradually realized the cruelty of colonialism along his journey. From witnessing the suffering of colonial countries like Singapore to seeing people being brutally exploited in Colombo under the British colonial rule, Ho Chi Minh realized the law of big fish swallowing small fish in these regimes. Even a country that promotes human freedom like America is full of painful injustices. Behind the slogan, Democratic Republic of the American bourgeoisie, stands brutal exploitation. Ho Chi Minh deeply sympathized with the lives of black laborers and was very angry at the racists who brutally executed black people, which he later wrote about in the article Lynching, a little-known aspect of American civilization. On the ground, covered in grease and smoke, lying a shapeless black flesh, burned and horribly frost coal, seemingly asking the setting sun, is that what they call civilization?
The treasury of printed publications, eloquent indictments, and compelling arguments on various fronts, accompanied by a narrative steeped in patriotism, resentment, and profound empathy, President Ho Chi Minh laid bare the atrocities of colonialism while reflecting the suffering of the enemy's people during years of imprisonment and hardship under the yoke of semi-feudal and ruthless colonial domination. However, where there is oppression, there is resistance. Ho Chi Minh has asserted, the brutality of capitalism has laid the groundwork. The only task left for socialism is to sow the seeds of liberation. Indeed, under the wise leadership of the Communist Party of Vietnam, our people have regained independence from those who claimed to be civilizers. The crimes of colonialism have been glaringly evident. Thus, humanity has excluded colonialism from its development. Nowadays, the peoples of the world no longer have to endure the oppression of colonialism. However, even though war has passed and peace has been restored, hostile forces still persist, with narratives of distortion, justification, and praises for the great contribution of the French colonialism, arguing that we should be grateful to them for that. This is entirely a distorted narrative of deluded hostile and reactionary forces, because the purpose of French colonialism when constructing those projects was not for the sake of enemy's people or to develop the colony, but solely to serve the process of exploitation and oppression of the colonial subjects. What they left behind were only remnants incomparable to the atrocities they had inflicted upon the Vietnamese people. Although it is necessary to close the past and look into the future, closing does not mean forgetting, distorting the truth, or justifying intolerable crimes. There is only one history. Our people have successfully shattered the chains of feudalism, colonialism, and imperialism. It is the fact that cannot be denied. In the current situation, with the peace process becoming increasingly complex and the hostile forces constantly seeking to sabotage Vietnam's party and state, we, as the future masters of the country, must be extremely cautious of those sophisticated and dangerous narratives. Every Vietnamese citizen must take responsibilities for self-cultivation, knowledge enrichment, moral upbringing, as well as living and working according to the ideology of Ho Chi Minh, thereby contributing to making our Vietnam a more beautiful and flourishing country, ensuring the prosperity and happiness of our people.